Hey everyone, it's AJ Barce.
And this is Chris Powell. We are the co-hosts of the Bellingham Podcast.
And because we made a mistake on the last episode, we just had to double it. And we did it again.
Yeah, oops, we did it again.
It's music.
Exactly. This is actually episode 180 that you're about to listen to, even though we make reference of another number. We won't tell you what that number is, but we've already recorded that number. This is episode 180 of the Bellingham Podcast.
You've tuned into the Bellingham Podcast for the week of February 7th, 2021. This is episode 178.
It's a two-parter.
From that forest bathing city by the Salish Sea, I'm still AJ Barce.
And straight out of 98226, I am Chris Powell. On this episode, hey, Mr. DJ, keep playing that song over and over and over again. AJ and I are going to talk about the music that moves us, both past, present, and future. Well, maybe we haven't discovered that music in the future. But in the meantime, you're listening to the Bellingham Podcast. All right, I'm going to start this one off. You were about to say something, and I'm taking this one over. Happy belated birthday, AJ.
Thanks, Chris.
You are now, 29?
Yes, absolutely.
Sure, sounds great. Congratulations on another trip around the sun. Continued success in this upcoming year of life. What'd you do for your birthday?
Well, Chris, I don't know if you've looked around you, but...
I look around myself all the time.
It's a pandemic.
Yeah.
So there wasn't much that we did. Got some seafood from, shout out to Taylor Shellfish, of course, and, brought it home, did a big old boil of seafood because I am a man of the sea.
That's right.
Love the Salish Sea. Where are we, Chris? This is weird.
Let's get back on track. We are back again at the Big Rock Garden, and I like that term that I used last episode, the notorious BRG.
I love it.
Now we're in a little bit of a gazebo location, kind of in the middle of the perimeter of walking places around. We're in the dead center, if you will, of the Big Rock Garden.
Hey, Chris, I want to spring something on you because you've done that to me on too many episodes. What's your favorite piece in this collection? Do you have one?
I think there is one that is that one right over there.
Let's do a walk and talk, shall we?
Yeah, let's do that.
This is us. This is Chris Powell and AJ Barce walking on the trails of the Big Rock Garden, passing the salal and the cedars overhead.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of it kind of looks like an Asian temple sculpture. Pagoda. And it says, "Freedom is not free." This is honoring Whatcom County servicemen and women who served in the Korean War back in 2003. So that pagoda that we mentioned last episode, this was a secondary one, but I just like the simplicity of it, and just to be able to take some time. And I don't know art. I know a couple guys named Art, but I don't know the field of art, and I don't know what all goes into it, but it's nice to examine and appreciate its beauty.
You could have just went with it. It makes you feel like Zen.
No, I saved that on a number of occasions. I really feel Zen. My fingers are getting a little numb from being out in the chilliness.
Oh, it's only a balmy 36 degrees, Chris.
But it's not snowing and icy.
Not yet. Actually, it's coming next week, apparently.
All right, what the heck are we talking about, AJ?
We are doing part 2 of our techno audiophilia, a.k.a. our hi-fi on a lo-fi budget. And this episode is dedicated to the albums, and I mean albums, that shaped who we are, both past, present, and future. So last episode, we talked about a little bit of the tech, and I kind of went a little bit off the rails with regards to analog and digital having its place in audiophilia. And this episode, this is like after I'm actually genuinely surprised, Chris, that we never tackled this because you are the king of 80s rock and references thus attributed. But this is all about the music.
It is. Not to be confused with Run DMC's King of Rock.
See, there it is.
Yeah, exactly. Get ready, folks. I got a boatload of them. No, actually, we initially started the show as Bellingham Podcast Media Tech.
Yeah.
We're two technologists. And then our personalities eventually came into place with Captain Get Out and Captain Minimal. And music happens to show up every now and then, but, we have some different music styles in a lot of cases. But yeah. I'm gonna go Tick in this case, and you're going to be Talk.
I love it.
All right. So Tick, I got started in music way back in the late 70s. And the first 8-track that I really was aware of.
8-track?
Yeah.
Rad, dude.
Yeah. Go Google it, kids. Oh, actually, DuckDuckGo it, kids. In my dad's green Chevrolet Impala station wagon, it had an 8-track player in it. And my parents often went to the Salvation Army and Goodwill thrift stores, because they like to pop some tags as well. But one of the 8 tracks they got was Star Wars Disco. Yeah, you heard me. Check it out on YouTube. So they got it's loosely tied in with the majestic Star Wars theme, but it's with the oons, and you can picture John. Give it a disco beat, and John Travolta doing the whole disco moves in Saturday Night Fever. Yeah, I listened to that a lot. Wow. That was the first 8-track album that I was aware of. Talk.
So for me, I'm going to go more of my formative years. So growing up, my mom was a fan of country western, and my dad was a fan of oldies. So between the two, like, I kind of have appreciation of like anything from the Beach Boys to pick any contemporary like country western singer. And I wasn't one of those kids that had the 80s rock posters pasted on the wall and stuff. I was more of the understanding the instrumentals behind it and how a person could, out of hard rock, the sweet solos. I wanted to know how you could make those notes come off of a fretboard and not have your fingers on fire.
Yeah, that would be a 3-parter episode for us to discuss those. But anyway, that's my wheelhouse. I get where you're coming from.
And so whether it was listening to Willie Nelson, you just do simple licks, or for me, one pinnacle 1968 album that my dad introduced me to that would later come and revisit me in my high school era was Mason Williams' Classical Gas.
Oh, yeah.
And if you haven't heard this, folks, like it is one of those things where it was on the Billboard pop charts, and it is an instrumental.
Oh yeah.
And in '68, it was funny. So I actually have for my birthday, I actually got a 45 of the original Classical Gas, which is actually it's only 2 songs. It's not the full album. Which, if you're listening to this, Classical Gas was the A side and B side was Long Time Blues, which is not my favorite song of his, but Classical Gas for me, it just surmised the fact that here is a gentleman who could play classical, flamenco, instrumental, whatever you want to call that song. And the fact is that it was iconic, and it is still an iconic song.
Well, it's a classic.
And, well, it's hence the name, Classical Gas.
Uh-huh.
Which is funny is, you love trivia, because last episode you talked about IMDb, and there's no really music IMDb that I know of.
Unless you consult the CPDB.
CP?
Yeah, the Chris Powell database.
Yeah. So it was released in 1968 by Mason Williams. And here's the thing. It was initially called Classical Gasoline.
Huh.
And the song was envisioned to be, quote, the fuel for a classical guitar repertoire.
Well,
the title was later shortened because of a music copyist inadvertently shortened it to Classical Gas. So
happy accident.
Yeah. And it became, it peaked as number 2 on the Billboard charts, and then number 3 in the U.S. easy listening charts for.
I think instead of links in the show notes in which you're currently drinking right now,
coffee for the record.
There you go. Yeah, keep yourself warm. I would recommend that y'all fire up the old YouTube and type in Mason Williams Classical Gas.
1968.
And inevitably, you will get to listen to this song.
Yeah.
Go ahead and hit pause on this program right now. Okay, now that you're back. Wasn't
that
a great song? All right, cool. So,
Tick.
The first cassette tape I ever bought in my formative years of middle school, junior high, if you will, I was probably in, I was actually in, I think about 1984, I was 11 years old. And that would put me smack dab in 6th grade. Back in the days I watched WWF wrestling, and there was a tag team named Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo. And they came out to a song called Born in the USA by Bruce Springsteen. First cassette I ever bought. Here's some trivia about me, folks. Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA. And no, hackers, this is not one of those security questions that I would put for any websites. No, I just thought it was really cool, and it was a popular, big, huge album release in 1984, I believe. That was my first cassette. Tick.
So
Talk.
So again, I had a hybrid of country to my left and oldies to my right, and somehow in my middle school and later I guess junior high years.
Give us the time frame of when that is, because I talked about middle school in the 80s for me.
So this would have been the mid 90s for me.
All right, fair enough, you youngin'.
So as I have my mom's taste of country western to my left and my dad's oldies.
Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Here I am, stuck in the middle with you.
And so I discovered that oldies was a genre, and there's something pre-oldies, and that was kind of the Rat Pack era. And I really fell in love with that era.
The crooners.
The crooners, anything from like the 20s, 30s, 40s on up.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get some classical stylings out of that, but really, especially because of my Italian heritage, I really fell in love with the Rat Pack. And Sammy Davis Jr. I remember seeing him on one of the films. I think it was Ocean's 11, the original.
Oh yes, the original one.
Seeing him jump up and sing EO 11, I was like, "What is this music? This is amazing!" And so I really kind of went down that rabbit hole. Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra,
Bobby Darin, all of those crooners.
Yeah. And listening to them in their heyday. So there is, and this is a link in the show notes that is Nonazon.
What? I'm sorry, what?
This is the thing that you sprung on me. Yes, folks. Ever since Chris Powell jumped on me on the 175th edition of the Bellingham podcast, all of our links moving forward in 2021, we're going to try to be Nonazon, so that it's not an Amazon link.
Well, there you go.
So this isn't actually to an LP. It is also in digital, and it's classic Sinatra. And it's his greatest performances from 1953 to 1960.
Right on.
So One More for the Road, all of those. And it's definitely something that I've been eyeing.
The Lady is a Tramp.
Oh, yeah.
Luck Be a Lady.
Yes.
He had a thing about women, didn't he?
Well, again... Yes, this was the Mad Men era, Chris.
Right. All right.
Tick.
Yeah. So, cassettes were a thing back in the middle school era. Another thing that was popular were the 45 records. And when I say 45, I'm not talking about my IQ. This would be the RPM speed of the record, because normally a long play, 33 revolutions per minute. There's also 78, which is me when I have 5 energy shots in one sitting.
Fun fact, do not put a 78 on your contemporary turntable. Those needles are bigger.
Well, there you go. Yeah. You heard it here first. And so the first 45 single, A-side, B-side, you only get one song per side. This one was the Pet Shop Boys' West End Girls.
What?
Yeah, you heard me. And so on MTV, I grew up, my formative middle school years were during the time when I Want My MTV was a catchphrase, and they actually played, get this, kids, music videos.
Wait, what?
Yeah, it's not just stupid programming of a bunch of kids mugging for the camera. No, this one was like 2 young 20-something English blokes, one of whom is in a full-length black coat, not smiling, just walking around the English streets with a really acerbic look on his face, and his buddy is just looking away as the guy's talking emotionless, singing the lyrics of West End Girls. I was entranced by it. Okay. Liked it so much, had to buy the 45. Talk.
Oh, that's a good one. So one of the first CDs that I got, leading in, so from middle school to junior high, at the end of junior high, my dad bought me my first guitar.
Ooh.
And it was, I still have it.
What was yours?
It's a Fender DG3, a dreadnought blonde top.
So yours was an acoustic first guitar.
Yeah. Cool. All of my guitars are acoustic.
PV Tracer electric
PV?
guitar.
Whoa,
PV Tracer.
rock on.
No, it was cheap. They didn't want to make too much of an investment. I'm stealing your thunder.
No,
but anyway,
cool.
Go ahead with Fender
No,
DG3.
I remember those. Was that from musician friends?
No, it was from Straight, like the Strait of Juan de Fuca, Straight Music in Port Angeles, Washington. Because I grew up in Sequim, and Sequim didn't have any music stores, but Port Angeles did. And I got that electric guitar in a horrible shade of blue, 1 pickup, always out of tune because I didn't know how to tune a guitar with intonation, and a 10-watt Fender amplifier.
Yeah, a little front man.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that's me. We're talking about you.
So
Talk.
okay, so for me, I don't remember. It might have been for a birthday present. I got an album from my mom and dad, and it was when I was starting to play, because I play more finger picking, more acoustical guitar, and it was a very obscure CD called Classical Guitar Masters Variation in Measure, and it has like Jenna Pete on it. It's got Fur Elise, and it's all done by acoustic guitar masters, and it was also my first introduction to like, oh, you can add reverb to stuff, and I remember putting it in my Discman, and
made by Sony,
sound isolating whatever headphones my dad had, and listening to that, and that was when I was like, I could just I wanted so bad to be able to play like that.
Oh yeah. No, there's a record label back in the day called Windham Hill. And in the 80s, it was straight acoustic, and they branched out, into other styles. Beautiful music, just duck, duck, go, Windham Hill, and just look at some of the artists. But yeah, acoustic guitar.
That also sounds like a great album, Duck, Duck, Go, Windham Hill.
Or a great password, too.
Well, you know what else is a great password?
What's that?
KMRE 102.3 FM.
That's actually...
special character.
That would be 10 characters, letters, numbers, capital, lowercase. Yeah, that would be great on the internet for a password. And if you were to go to kmre.org, they're streaming all of what they're playing right now. Don't hit pause yet, but they can play, what's on their... Listen to them on kmre.org.
The normal shtick.
I lost my inertia on that one.
That's okay. Tick.
Let's see. So in my early years of high school, which would be the late 80s, I got my guitar, like I referred to the PV Tracer, and I tried rock, but that was really chug, and I learned the power of moving chords, root fifth chords. But then I also discovered blues, and my first compact disc player, like I mentioned last episode, the first CD I bought, which are actually the first of my two names' initials, CD. The D stands for danger, of course. The first CD I ever bought was George Thorogood Live, because he's not just bad to the bone. He's also one bourbon, one scotch, one beer, which is a cover of John Lee Hooker's song, Move It On Over, Madison Blues, I Drink Alone, because obviously George Thorogood, if you're doing blues, you're going to drink, like a lot of our show notes. But no, it was so easy to play blues, and I'm like, with my right hand, and I'm left-handed, which was an advantage because I can really get a power grip on the frets. I picked off a lot of George Thorogood blues songs, and then I realized, he's covering Muddy Waters, Bo Diddley, John Lee Hooker. I'll check these guys out.
Right.
So anyway, I'm a big fan of the blues. Talk.
So leading into going into college, like I mentioned in the last episode, I stumbled upon, because of course I was a Western student, so of course knowing about Bellingham and Death Cab for Cutie, and that era, the Postal Service had dropped Give Up, and just like anybody else, like I remember wanting that album. It was the first album, not as I've said, I ranged from classic Sinatra to classical music, and here I am going, I want this like electronica, but not really electronica. What is this music? And that's where I really found it. And my wife also around the same time also found that album, and we share a lot of memories of that playing in the background as we study.
That's cool. Talked about the first cassette. This is a tick, by the way. First cassette, first 8-track that I recalled listening to, first 45, first compact disc, but the first LP, the first vinyl album I purchased. It was in the Salvation Army in Port Angeles, Washington, on a Saturday morning. I was stuck there while my mom was looking through all the aisles of clothes and things like that. No, don't worry, Mom. Love you still. Thanks for clothing me with all of the retail stuff.
Thanks, Chris's mom.
I'm in the vinyl records section, and I happened to just see this picture of a guy in kind of a blurred photo as he's a guitarist, and it just said Ted Nugent.
Huh.
And so I bought this Ted Nugent because I heard about him in some of these guitar magazines. And let me just stop, take a time out for a second, folks. When I say Ted Nugent, disengage from what your mind might be thinking right now. Let's go back to the 1970s. In 1976, I believe, for this debut album. Let's go back to when he was leaving the Amboy Dukes as the lead singer and guitarist and going on a solo artist. A really great solo artist Rockstar, Stranglehold was my jam. That was my first album, Snakeskin Cowboys, and a number of others. But I played learning guitar. A lot of it was learning some of these classic rock blues artists. And so Ted Nugent's Self-Titled was my first LP ever bought. Talk. So my first job, my boss, shout out to David if he listens. I remember this one day, he was an audiophile. He background in actual audio production and stuff. It's where I learned a lot of my studio work was learning kind of under his wing. He introduced me this one day to this folk artist, and of course folk is in my wheelhouse. I love classical, and I love that
that style, because it's kind of, folk for me is like the essence of going country without the Western. You know, you're singing a ballad, you're singing a story. It's a poem with music behind it. So I love folk. But he wasn't listening to the Jack Johnson type of folk that we know today. He was listening to a man by the name of John Gorka. And here's this like this gentleman with simple guitar, simple beat, and again, poetry in lyrics. And so I asked him one day, who is this? He goes, oh, it's John Gorka. Who? And he's just like, basically the same look that you give me sometimes, like, okay, I'll get you a bib.
Yeah.
Here you go. And he let me borrow a Company You Keep. And on it is a song called Abraham and a few others that even today, Chris, if you were to look at my playlist, you'll probably see that album, probably one of the most played that I still play. And it's just because David introduced it to me. And again, it's just, you just have a good songwriter and a good story. It's great.
So for my tick, in high school, as I'm learning guitar and everything like that, I played a lot of board games, a lot of card games with my father.
Magic the Gathering?
Not quite.
Okay.
This was more like double solitaire and chess and checkers.
Cribbage.
And cribbage, yes. And so, oh, by the way, Bellingham, you may be seeing me whenever the Whatcom Dispute Resolution Center has their Fun for a Cause cribbage tournaments. Yeah, I'm the guy that's beating you by 30 points.
King Cribbage.
The background music that my father and I were listening to, my father had an extensive record collection from his heyday in the 50s. And, you know, Mitch Miller and Louis Prima and all of these singer-songwriters, very similar to the 50s crooners that you were mentioning before. But there was one jazz artist in particular, and his name was Dave Brubeck. Now, for those of you that aren't aware of Dave Brubeck, we'll get you a bib.
There it is.
Here is a Bay Area pianist. Very similar to Vince Guaraldi in the Charlie Brown scores. But Dave Brubeck messed around with time signatures. So now Take 5 is Dave Brubeck's, one of his most famous, the Dave Brubeck Quartet was one of the most famous jazz songs ever created. And it's in 5/4 time, not 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Beautiful song, beautiful artist. And as I'm playing, trying to beat my dad at these games, this is playing in the background. And there was a live recording that Dave Brubeck had called Bravo Brubeck live in Mexico. Just some wonderful, instrumentals, trap drum kit, upright bass, clarinet or an alto sax or maybe a soprano sax, I forget which one, and Dave on piano. Check out Dave Brubeck because this artist will enhance your life for dinner parties, for quiet times alone reading a magazine, sitting by the fireplace, and also just to be able to listen to something new that is not overproduced. Talk.
Speaking of not overproduced, and I've mentioned this band before. The thing that I look forward to is whatever memories my son has of us listening to his favorite little raccoon character on chill hop music.
Yes.
And that's where I got introduced to lo-fi. And so now as a professional, like, we've gone through the eras, like listening to anything from the blues to the oldies to the crooners to the oldies to, the millennium of the electronica ballads. There's this other thing where you introduced me to this thing of, ambience.
Yes.
But the thing about ambience for me is that it's a little bit, I can't, it's good background music for me.
It's a little too subdued for your taste.
So I need, again, kind of like a ballad. I need to have poetry, whether there's words or not. And that's where I like this aspect that chill hop does. And there's also, chill hop's based out of the Netherlands. There's another band called Chilled Cow. There's a lot of chilled in this sphere. They're based out of France. But again, there's kind of a beginning and an end. There's a movement to it, more like classical music with that regard. This genre is called lo-fi, which is kind of a spin on hi-fi, hence the two-part show that we have. And with lo-fi, it's down-tempo.
But it's still relaxation. It is still a soundscape. It just has a tempo to it.
And on top of that, the other thing that they tend to craft is that analog feel. They'll actually put in hisses and pops, but it's part of the rhythm, which is kind of interesting. So a lot of people have asked me about chill hop lately. I don't know why. And the big question is, was there an album to be pointed to? And there is. There is a part of chill hop is kind of a consortium of different artists. There is an artist called Sleepy Fish. And especially here in the Salish Sea, the story of there's actually a story behind the 3 albums that Sleepy Fish has produced, where they actually did a 3-part vinyl, and that's kind of where you get the story of the fact that Sleepy Fish was actually a fish in a fishbowl. This young lady brought this fish home, and unfortunately there was a tidal wave. She lives on a houseboat. The fish went into the ocean. Girl grows up, becomes a research scientist for the ocean, and in preserving the blue, she stumbles upon her old fish now in the ocean. The fish is called Sleepy Fish, where this fish has this ability to help people through the melodies of its scales of the fish.
Oh, okay.
Is this whole thing, and I've read the story to my son. He loves Sleepy Fish. It's very Sailor Sea vibes, dude. It's very Sailor Sea vibes.
Great story. No, that's a cool one to check out. Final tick for me. So I'm a established young man, college graduate, and my father has since passed away. So my primary music source has moved on, and I'm trying to figure things out for myself. And I discovered in efforts to try to have nice background music when I'm inviting people over to my place. There's a jazz trumpeter, and jazz has always been a part of my upbringing, but a jazz trumpeter named Wynton Marsalis. Wynton Marsalis is one of the most famous jazz trumpeters in the world, if you haven't heard of him. But there is a series of releases that he's made called Marsalis Standard Time, Volume 1 through Volume 5, perhaps. I lost track after a while, but Volumes 1 through 3. If you were to go on your streaming music of choice, app of choice, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, whatever, you'd probably find this. Yeah, that too. Very chill, I gotta say, romantic music, because in my early 20s, I was trying to be romantic, failed miserably on a number of occasions. But that music was a great background that you could just have a conversation. It didn't need to be forefront or at the forefront of what was going on. Like, so much music is just screaming for your attention in so many ways of distraction. Check out Wynton Marsalis, Standard Time, Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3, especially Volume 3. If you have a special someone that you want to get a little lovey-dovey with, it's called The Resolution of Romance. And I have enjoyed many listens to that CD album. So, that is a big, diverse rundown. We didn't even talk about my Headbangers Ball days. That's like...
Oh, that's going to be... Like I said, I think we're going to have a music appreciation episode every so often, because we're going to revisit this.
Yeah, I think that's worth it. But in the meantime, we should probably do that. But in the meantime, we got to, check out the old quality assurance.
Oh, the old quality assurance. These picks are brought to you by AJ Barcet and Chris Powell for your... quality assurance.
That's right.
So I've got one that kind of just loops in both episodes, and that is if you're in the Bellingham area and you're interested in vinyl. You mentioned the Salvation Army. I
know that the Goodwill on Sunset should have some audio types available, but anyway, don't quote us on that. But anyway, continue.
So you can always go to secondhand stores and stuff, but here in Bellingham we have a kind of a special thing. We have a record shop. They're called EM, Everyday Music.
Formerly Cellophane Square, for those of you that were here back in the day.
Across from what was also formerly Avalon that burned down, if I recall.
Yeah. Pour one out for Avalon.
But anyway, the everydaymusic.com, you can check out their website because all of our links are non-Amazon. And just go, they are open during the pandemic. You have to mask up. They have a cap and stuff. But you can thumb through some of the albums that Chris and I have thrown out in this episode. But also because we have international listeners, I did a little bit of digging. So there is a search engine, for lack of better terms, for all of our international listeners if you wanted to dive into the analog side of audio for vinyl. If you go to recordstores.love.
Well, there you go. That's a .com that I love.
So .love, and what you can do is you can put in you can give it your browser your location data, or if you're like Chris Powell and I, you just put in your zip code, and it will zoom to your region and show you the record shops closest to you. There are some other ones out there. This one, it seemed to be the most up to date because it showed which ones we actually have, as opposed to like Avalon, which is burned down and stuff. So it looks like it's updated. So check that out if you're interested in the analog side of things.
So for my quality assurance, I want to have something related to last episode's A Strangely Isolated Place. There's a wonderful website out there called headphonecommute.com. Oh, how I miss the typical commutes that we would have in our cars. Yes, but anyway, Headphone Commute is another ambient electronica type website that gives a lot of wonderful reviews, in-depth reviews of a lot of these soundscape albums and interviews with the artists as well. So here's that IMDb factor that I so enjoy. You get to learn a lot about the current artists that are out there. Headphonecommute.com, and I'd say probably check it out because that is where I go to discover a new artist that may be similar to others that I've already listened to. That's a well done. It's a very clean website. I enjoy the layout that they have. They have a really good theme on their website. Don't know if they're Squarespace or WordPress.
Wow, Chris, you just really are tearing this one apart.
I don't mess around. Gee, I think we should probably stick a fork in this show.
Okay, well, that wraps it up for this two-part edition of the Bellingham Podcast. Thank you again so much for listening to us, rating us, reviewing us, dropping a needle on us, wherever you like to get your podcast. Remember, if you're analog or digital, you might be listening to us on KMRE 102.3 FM.
They are... Wow, that was quick. They are streaming worldwide on kmre.org for all of you that listen to us at 1.0 and 1.3x, where AJ sounds like a chipmunk right now.
Nope, that's only 5/4 timing, but I am AJ Barce.
And I'm Chris Powell. Thanks once again for joining us for this two-parter on the Bellingham Podcast. So have you gotten ajbarce.love for your .com purchase?
No, I'm not that narcissistic.
Okay, well, there still is hope for you.